Hi everyone, Mike Stuccino, Master Herbalist here. And before I get started, I want you to notice my boy Bones ain't with me today. And I'm sorry to report that Bones had a little bit of an accident. You know, Bones, as you probably could tell, was in what you might call an undernourished, fragile state. And while we were trying to rebuild him and get him well, he had a little bit of an accident, but he's going to recover just fine and he'll be back in the videos. I want everyone just to kind of keep their fingers crossed for Bones. Send Bones your good wishes so the boner will be back. All right? Again, the usual disclaimer. The information you're about to receive is not intended to treat, prescribe, or diagnose any specific medical condition and is not to be used as a substitute for diagnosis, treatment, or any other information given to you by your healthcare provider. With that said, today's topic of conversation is going to be actually part 2 of a video I did when I first started the channel a couple of months ago. I did a video about the fact that I went to Peru, which this coming January will make 2 years. It was right before COVID, and I did ayahuasca for 2 weeks. And the first video that I had done on this topic, it took a little bit of time for me to be able to compile my thoughts from the journey, put together the lessons that I learned. And I just, what I had done in that first video was actually just to read verbatim, word for word actually, the article that I had written for someone who wanted me to write an article about my ayahuasca journey. And I just basically made it into a video. But I'm going to go a little bit more into depth about my experience in Peru doing ayahuasca. I'm also going to go a little bit more into depth about the lessons I learned. Now that we're coming close to the 2-year mark, the lessons are always continuously sort of festering in my mind that I'm trying to learn from and get better from. And I'm also going to discuss my experience with how it's relevant to other psychedelic compounds. Okay, so first and foremost, I think it's important to lay a little bit of groundwork on this topic, because I think the one thing people have to understand with ayahuasca is that there's no what you would call typical experience. Everyone's experience is very individual. How they go through it is very individual. Whatever you're trying to face, whatever you're trying to deal with is very individual. What I will say is this. Doing ayahuasca takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage, not because you're doing a psychedelic plant or a combination of psychedelic plants, but more along the lines because what you're really doing is you are giving up control and you are willingly giving into the idea that you are going to face your shit. You're going to face your demons. You're going to face what's deep inside of you that's sort of been suppressed, that you've never really let out. There's so much that we build up in our lives and that we allow to sort of sit there and fester, and we push it down, and we, especially in the world that we're living in today, where it's all about the distractions of our phone and our iPads and our laptops and the news and all the noise and the distraction around us, that we never have moments of peace. And it's very difficult in a chaotic world and in chaotic lives to be able to find moments of peace, moments of tranquility, moments of just sitting and just being in that moment. it's also important to understand that it's this idea that you always have to feel good or always have to be happy 24 hours a day, 7 days a week is not just ridiculous, but it's a fairly unattainable goal. In a 1 day period, we go through a whole rainbow, for lack of better terms, of emotions. We're angry, we're sad, we're happy, we're joyous. We cry, we laugh, we yell, we scream, all these different things, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with any of them. You're going to go through emotions, you're going to feel what you're going to feel, and allowing yourself to feel what you want to feel or what you're going to feel, there's absolutely nothing wrong with. But we've been taught to suppress that, to push it down. And what happens is, like anything else that you continue to suppress, that you continue to push down, pressure builds like a volcano, and eventually the pressure just cannot be held in anymore, and you implode, you explode. And that's usually when your life takes a horrible turn downhill, okay? Or something bad happens, or, your life just goes into a tailspin. Every single person who's done ayahuasca, more than likely, didn't just do it. The ones who went in with the intention, the good intentions behind it, didn't just do it willy-nilly. Just, woke up one morning and says, I want to do ayahuasca. No. More than likely, my guess is many people who have done ayahuasca, they felt this very strong calling for it, like I did. I had learned about ayahuasca 12 years prior to even doing it. And over the years, I read a lot of articles. And then in that time frame, I came across a book called The Ayahuasca Test Pilot. And it was written by a man named Chris Kilham, who's also otherwise known as the Medicine Hunter. And Chris is an ethnobotanist that's traveled to 50 or 60 different countries over the span of his career. And, he studies plant medicine. But one of the things that he really and truly knows and understands is ayahuasca. And this, to me, in my opinion, for someone who has never done ayahuasca, this is the book that I think everyone should read before even considering to go on that really amazing and scary and wonderful journey, okay? And the reason I say that is because, unlike most of the other books out there on this topic, Chris's book really takes a very unique perspective, because you're not really hearing about, the serpents and the snakes and the green and yellow monkeys that are swinging through the air as you're doing ayahuasca. What he's talking about is, he's talking about the practicalities of the different things that go into a great ayahuasca ceremony, the different places you can go, the different things you may or may not experience. And he really gives you a very practical, hands-on look versus looking at it from what you might call the psychedelic experience itself. He does talk a little bit about, but it's mostly about everything else that sort of encompasses what it means to do ayahuasca, who should and shouldn't potentially do ayahuasca, what are the reasons for people to do ayahuasca, and so on and so forth. So I would, if I were to nail it down to one book, I think that the book, The Ayahuasca Test Pilot by Chris Kilham, Kilham, is probably, in my opinion, for people who, again, have never done ayahuasca and are considering it, this is the book you should read, because I think it gives, again, this really great practical look versus looking at it from a more sort of a way. You know what I'm saying? Because I found that when I've spoken to people who have read other books on the topic, and it was more about the psychedelic aspect of it and the visionary aspect of it, it was something that they A, couldn't relate to, which turned them off from ayahuasca, or B, it just scared the ever-loving shit out of them, because they don't understand, because they didn't understand that this person was really just simply talking about their individual experience. And that does not mean that your individual experience won't be different, because more than likely it will be very different. Okay? That's why when you read most books on ayahuasca, you know, while they may all talk about aspects of ayahuasca that are similar, when they talk about their experience itself, the reality is that every single book is different. I've read quite a few books since doing ayahuasca, and I'll be honest, when it talks about the individual's experience, all of them were grossly different in so many ways. Okay? So, I guess, you know, you'll have to excuse my, I'm just trying to kind of let this flow as naturally as possible. This is not a very easy topic to talk about, because what I don't want to do is, I'm not looking to talk about the actual experience itself that I had, or experiences that I had, because I don't think they're going to be very relatable to most people when they hear it. They're just going to think I'm a fucking wacko, which is perfectly fine, because who knows, maybe I am. But I think what's more important to talk about are the lessons that I learned, okay? And I think the biggest thing that I get from ayahuasca, and other people would probably agree that they got from ayahuasca, is this unfiltered, amazing way of just facing your shit, of the most fearless way of facing your shit. And it teaches you the lesson that if you just let go and accept what you're receiving from Mother Ayahuasca, who is really a teacher more than anything, okay? I think one of the things that this will relate to you is the idea of when you let go and you allow the experience to be taught to you, and you're open to the experience, you can learn an awful lot about yourself. Because I myself had a very, very different experience from every single other person that I was with doing ayahuasca at the ayahuasca center I went to. Okay, I apologize. Let me just tell you, the place I went, it was called Dream Glade Ayahuasca Center, and this is the place that I can't endorse or recommend them highly enough. The staff is incredible. The shamans are incredible. The owner and the facilitators are incredible. The experience is incredible. The people you meet there are incredible. The whole fucking thing was just, if in my opinion, if you're in Peru and you're looking to do ayahuasca, which of course you should plan out, not just drop on by, because it doesn't work that way, go to Dream Glade Ayahuasca Center. That, in my opinion, is the one I would recommend. It's based on my only experience of going there. Chris's book has other ayahuasca centers in there that he recommends. That's how I learned about Dream Glade, is through his book. So I believe that it's one of these things where probably any of the ones he recommends are going to be good. Okay, some might not even be open anymore since COVID, but it's just something you're going to have to do a little bit of research on and figure out. I know Dream Glade is, because I keep in touch with them. So with that said, when I talk about this idea of learning lessons and speaking specifically about what I learned, my experience, like I said, was incredibly unique and different from everyone else. Mine was a very emotional, it was very physically exhausting, it was very mentally and emotionally exhausting, and I also had the day after each ceremony, because I was there for 2 weeks, and there was a total of 6 ceremonies. There were every other night. But the one interesting thing is that some of my ceremonies, the day after, I was still feeling residual effects from the aspect of the ceremony. So, for example, all of my ceremonies, I actually physically turned into a very aggressive jaguar. There was a lot of growling, there was a lot of aggressive behavior, there was a lot of noise coming out of me, and there was a lot of struggle, okay? And what I personally learned was that because I'm a control freak and because I try so hard to control the outcome of everything, that, you know something? I just have to sometimes be able to let go of that control and accept things as they sort of roll through the punches or roll through the motions. And that's very difficult for me to do. And it still is to this day, but it was very, very in my face. It was very strong. And the lessons I learned were very profound. The other aspect of the letting go for me was this idea that my body did a lot of gyrating, and it almost kind of felt like I was a puppet on a string during aspects of my ceremony, which was very, very bizarre and odd because, I kind of felt like Pinocchio a little bit, And the reason, and again, what that taught me was this idea of that sometimes you just have to allow things to take their natural progression. Don't always feel like you have to be in control of everything. The lesson, of course, goes much more in depth and much deeper, but I think that is probably one of the more profound things that I learned there in different aspects. I'll also say that if you are planning to do ayahuasca, and this is something that you feel very strongly about, and you feel like it's your calling, and you feel like this is something that is going to improve your life in a substantial way, what I would also say to you is this: understand and be prepared that the work doesn't begin until you leave the center. What's happening to you during these ceremonies are all teachings, and you're supposed to take the time and think about the teachings and think about what you've learned from ayahuasca. And then when you go home back into the real world, is where you're going to really start to do the work to improve your life. Because in reality, doing the work at the Ayahuasca Center, which is away from your real everyday life, isn't really going to be very effective. The purpose of being in the middle of the jungle, secluded from the rest of the world, is so you can be in a place of peace and quiet in order to be able to go through the motions of the ceremony and be able to be taught the lessons you need to be taught, okay? The work and figuring it out comes afterwards, okay? Now, you're going to talk to each other afterwards. If you're in Ayahuasca Center, the next morning, usually, at least the one I was at, they did like this morning after, chat with the whole group, wanting to learn from each other's experiences and talk about each other's experiences and what we learned from it. And, there are several facilitators there that you could talk to at any time during the day or the evening where, if you want to work through something, because that's the place to do it. They're there to be your guides and to guide you. And that's what the shamans are there for as well, is to help you and to guide you. Okay? So these are all important things, because I don't ever want anyone to go in and do ayahuasca and get the impression that everything that's wrong with them is going to be cured or go away like that after the ayahuasca. The ayahuasca, as tough as it is and as courageous as you have to be to do it, and you do have to be courageous, not because you're drinking a plant medicine, but because you're willing and able to do what 99% of our society does not want to do. You are going in there to face your fucking shit, to face your demons, to face that stuff that you have been suppressing and pushing down and preventing yourself from being able to feel and process. Why? Because because you're afraid. It's okay that you're afraid. Everyone's afraid of that kind of stuff. And you know why everyone's afraid of that kind of stuff? Because it can be traumatic and it can be overwhelming and it can be triggering. Okay? But it needs to be faced. It needs to be looked at. It needs to be seen. And sometimes you need a catalyst like ayahuasca to help you through that process. Because sometimes we're so like this that the only thing that will get us to bring that brick wall down is to do something where you don't have a choice. Meaning once you drink, no matter how hard you fight ayahuasca, it will fight you back and it will win. I should say, she will fight you back. Mother Ayahuasca is what I should say. Will fight you back and will win because she knows her job, and her job is very clear, like any other mother, okay? Is to help guide you and nurture you and teach you the lessons you need to learn, okay? So, the other thing I wanted to talk about with my ayahuasca journeying was the other plant medicine, or I shouldn't say plant medicine, the other medicine that I used while I was there is called Kambo, which is actually, it is the poison that is secreted from a frog from the frog's skin found in the rainforest of Peru. Okay, and Kambo is a very, very, very different experience from anything even related to ayahuasca. Okay, with Kambo, what you're basically going through only lasts for 5, maybe 10 minutes total. Where ayahuasca, your journey is, each time you go on a journey, it's going to be anywhere between 6 to 7 hours, the journey, okay? And like in my case, even when I woke up the next morning from a few of my journeys, I had some residual feelings and things going on, like the growling and things like that I don't think anyone else at the center when I was there really experienced that residual feeling the next day, but my body was trying to clear some of this crap out of it. I was trying to get me to deal with what I needed to deal with. So it, kind of pushed along the next day. But with Kambo, what's really interesting about Kambo is that this is a medicine that basically teaches you to be extremely comfortable in an extraordinarily uncomfortable situation, okay? So basically, once you have administered the medicine, okay, what you start to feel is sort of like this tingling sensation in your lower extremities. And then you start to feel this almost like what you would call a buildup of pressure, slowly coming up your body, into your torso, into your chest. Your heart rate begins to increase, and the person who is facilitating this with you and helping you through this experience, they're reminding you just to stay calm and breathe through the experience. Because remember, if that's not a take-home lesson for practical everyday use, I don't know what the fuck is. Just to stay calm and try and breathe through your situation. The pressure begins to build and build and build and build, and you almost feel like, in a way, you have a lot of pressure up in your head because you're just trying to breathe through it and breathe through it. And what really lasts for about a minute feels like it's a fucking year. That's what it feels like. But the building up of pressure, right, it only lasts for about a minute. And then eventually you feel this need to purge, whether it's through your mouth or you shit yourself and you have to run to the bathroom. But either way, you purge. And then once you're done purging, you feel like the weight of the world has just literally been lifted off your shoulders. So anyone who's done this medicine knows that the basic principle behind doing it is the idea of being able to get comfortable with being really uncomfortable. And that is a simple, easy take-home lesson. And there's no thinking about that really. There's no wondering, well, is this something I'm going to get an epiphany about a year later? It's not like ayahuasca when it comes to that stuff. This is a very profound, in-your-face, easy to take home lesson. And it really is very effective because it puts you through the scenario of what it feels like to be really uncomfortable and try to get comfortable in that lack of comfort. And it really hits you hard. And then once you purge, and you generally don't tend to purge until you get yourself to be at a level of calmness with that pressure. Okay? So that's kind of how the medicine works is once you feel that unbelievable amount of pressure and you find yourself being able to breathe through it to a certain extent and begin to calm yourself down, that's when you'll purge, because that's when the medicine's going to say, all right, this guy's got it. Now let him throw up or shit himself. So again, I like my experience with Kambo. I only had to do it once. Will I probably do it again at some point going back for ayahuasca and Kambo? Sure, you never know. I can't say definitively yes, but it is something I would like to do again. So I've also, in regards to other psychedelics, I have to be honest when I say I don't have a ton of experience really when it comes to using other plant medicines. I have done mushrooms once. I went on a mushroom journey once, and I can say that it was a very similar experience in terms of the lessons and in terms of the aspects of what I was learning from the mushrooms as with ayahuasca. And I came to learn weeks later that there was something very interesting about that, because there seems to be a lot of people who've done ayahuasca and then did mushrooms within like a year or two, like me. And I have to be honest, they all seem to have said the same thing. The experience between that and ayahuasca was very, very, very similar. I don't have any experience with any other things like acid or MDMA or anything of that nature, but I can say this from people who I have spoken to and people who I know who have experience across the board using many of these different plant medicines and psychedelic substances. The reality is that each one of them are very unique in their own way. Each one of them have very unique and different lessons and different pathways in which they're going to hit you, in which they're going to teach you the lesson, in which you may or may not respond to. But there seems to be the overall consensus that ayahuasca is the one plant medicine where everyone's experience is going to be a truly unique individual experience. Whereas some of the others, maybe not. Maybe you talk to 20 people who all did acid or who did mushrooms or who did MDMA, and they all see a lot of great similarities in what they experienced. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that's why I think ayahuasca to me is the true teacher, is the true, is what I think to be, in my opinion, one of the more profound plant medicines. So I hope that this video has helped people understand a little bit about ayahuasca, a little bit about the ups and the downs, a little bit about why you should or shouldn't do it, what should draw you to ayahuasca, why you shouldn't do it, because, for example, so when people ask me why I did it, my response was very simple. I learned about it years prior, but I didn't have this overwhelming desire to do it. I was learning, I wanted to understand it, I wanted to get better knowledge on it, which, by the way, you can read 100 books before you do it. It won't touch the experience. The only way to understand it is to do it. and to go through the experience. But for the base knowledge of trying just to have some comprehension of what you may or may not go through, reading and understanding is a great thing. It wasn't until years later that I felt this very strong pulling on me, this very strong draw to wanting to do ayahuasca, okay? And that's the main reason why I did it, because I felt that at that time, almost 2 years ago, that was the right time for me to do it. That's when I felt drawn to ayahuasca. That's when I felt this desire and this need to do it. I should also mention, please, 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 if you are going to do this experience, please do this right. Do not go to Bob and Jane's fucking basement where they say their friend Billy Bob is a fucking shaman and is going to guide you through this experience. Please go to a real ayahuasca center in Costa Rica or in Peru where they properly vet each individual who wants to go there. They have a very extensive, most of them have a very extensive process. You won't necessarily get an answer to whether or not you've been accepted to that ayahuasca center for at least 3 to 7 days. It could be even longer. It just depends how backbooked they are. I know that when I did this, I planned this almost 2.5, 3 months in advance, okay? And I'll be honest, it took 7 days for the ayahuasca center to vet me out, to be able to accept me into the ayahuasca center. And that's what you want. You don't just want someone who's going to turn around and say, you know what, we'll take you in 5 seconds. Because that means that they don't know much about you. That means they didn't take the time. They just want your money. Go to a place that makes you fill out an extensive medical history and different forms that are going to tell you about your emotional stability, your physical stability, your health issues, your psychiatric health issues if you have any, and allow them to do their job and vet this stuff out so they know that you are going to be in a good, safe situation when you do it. Because if you use an ayahuasca center like the one I suggested, Dreamglade, or any of the ones that, for example, in Chris Kilham's book, which are all wonderful, okay, from my understanding, all of them do a great job of vetting. All of them do what they're supposed to do when it comes to making sure you're in a healthy, safe, and controlled environment when you're doing ayahuasca. So please, guys, don't think that you can save yourself $2,000, $3,000 because your friend John said, hey, I got my hands on some ayahuasca, we're going to do it in my basement, and my friend Billy Bob is going to be the fucking shaman. Please, I beg of you, do it right if you're going to do it, okay? Because if you don't, you're just going to put yourself at greater risk for having a bad ayahuasca experience, which could take a lot of time to recover from both mentally and physically, okay? Or on the other end of the spectrum, nothing may happen. And you may waste your time and money and get nothing from that experience in Bob's basement. You understand what I'm saying? Do it right, be smart, do it in the safest way possible. Do it with people who have a good reputation and who are highly experienced in this. You know, do a little bit of questioning. Ask around. Go on to different ayahuasca, like I guess they're called boards, where you can see what people say about these ayahuasca centers, and you can ask questions to these people about the shamans that are there, and the facilitators and the owners, and all these other things. Go there and do as much as, really take your time in making this experience the best and the safest it can be. Don't just wake up one morning and say, I want to do ayahuasca, and you plan it 4 days in advance and you go. Any ayahuasca center that's willing to take you that quickly, I have to be honest with you guys, I would really highly question it, okay? Give yourself at least a month because especially if it is your first time doing this, it is important to understand that your first time you're going to want to do the ayahuasca diet, which is a very bland diet, which is a very simple diet, which is going to eliminate a lot of foods from your normal eating habits that a lot of us are very much, I hate to say addicted to, but that we consume on a daily basis. And the reality is that that's something you don't just want to do cold turkey. If you're a coffee drinker, you have 2-3 cups a day, and you need to go out there in 3 days, well, you're gonna have to do all that stuff cold turkey, and things aren't gonna be pleasant for you. Doing the diet, following the instructions that the Ayahuasca Center tells you is going to make your experience a better experience. And each time you go back, you may not have to do the diet as long. So when I did it, I started the diet a month out. And what I did was every few days I eliminated another one of the things they asked me to eliminate. By the time I was, let's say, 10, 11 days out, I just rolled in as the diet being fully clean 10 days out. You understand what I'm saying? So take your time, be smart about it, make this experience the best you can, because, you know, this is your opportunity to learn and to be taught and to learn great things. And I'd love to see you guys get the best experience you can. So if you have any questions or you want to know more things about my experience, leave comments below, ask questions below. I'm happy to answer whatever questions I can to help guide you guys through these, through the initial experience of finding the Ayahuasca Center and answering questions potentially about the diet. Anything I can do to help make your experience better. I hope you learned a lot today about my ayahuasca experience and about, lessons and things of that nature. And I guess we'll see you next video.